The explosion ripped through Seoul National Bank at precisely 11:23 a.m. on a Friday morning. Glass shattered inward like deadly rain as Maya Thompson dove behind her desk, her designer heels skittering across marble floors now covered in debris. The security cameras would later reveal 4 masked figures. Military precision, calculated chaos. But what they couldn't capture was the platinum card in Maya's wallet. Black and unmarked, except for a single embossed character in gold. A character that meant protected in Korean. If you're captivated by this story, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't believe what happens next. The first time Jihoon saw her, he was there to acquire the bank, not save it. 8 months earlier, the executive floor of Seoul National Bank hummed with the tension of a hostile takeover. Jihoon had walked in wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars, his presence commanding silence from every person in the hallway. His reputation preceded him, the youngest chairman of the powerful Choi syndicate, a man who'd consolidated Seoul's financial underworld before his 30th birthday. "Mr. Choi, the board is ready for you," his attorney said, but Jihoon's attention had snagged on something else entirely. Someone else. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, tablet in hand, completely absorbed in whatever report she was reviewing. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, her tailored burgundy suit fitting her curves perfectly. But it was her expression that caught him. Focused, analytical, utterly fearless in a building where his arrival had made grown men nervous. "Who is that?" Jihoon asked quietly. His attorney followed his gaze. "Maya Thompson, senior investment analyst, American, originally from New York. She's been here 2 years, brought in for their international expansion program. Brilliant, according to everyone. Also completely unmarried and unattached, if the office gossip is accurate." Jihoon felt something shift in his chest, something he hadn't experienced in the 15 years since he'd inherited his father's empire at 16. Curiosity mixed with something dangerously close to fascination. The meeting was brutal. Jihoon systematically dismantled every argument the board presented, his knowledge of their vulnerabilities absolute. But through it all, his attention kept drifting to the woman who'd slipped into the back of the room, taking notes with laser focus. When the board finally capitulated, agreeing to his acquisition terms, most people rushed to ingratiate themselves with him. Maya Thompson simply gathered her materials and headed for the door. "Ms. Thompson," Jihoon called out. His English was flawless, educated in London before returning to Seoul to take over his father's operations. She turned, her dark eyes meeting his without a trace of the fear or calculation he usually saw. "Yes, Mr. Choi?" "Your analysis of the Southeast Asian market expansion. I'd like to discuss it." "I don't report to you," Maya said evenly. "Yet." Around them, the room went silent. Nobody spoke to Choi Jihoon like that. Nobody. But Jihoon smiled, a real smile that made his attorney's eyes widen in shock. "Yet," he agreed. "Tomorrow, my office. 9 a.m. I have a meeting at 9. Cancel it." Maya's eyebrow arched. "Is that a request or a command, Mr. Choi?" "Does it matter?" "To me? Yes. I don't respond well to commands." The tension was electric. Jihoon could feel his men shifting uncomfortably, uncertain how to handle this unprecedented situation. But he found himself enjoying it. This beautiful woman who refused to be intimidated. "Then it's a request," he said smoothly. "Please, I'd very much appreciate your insights on the expansion strategy." 9:30, Maya countered. "I'll bring the full market analysis. You bring an open mind." She left before he could respond, and Jihoon found himself laughing for the first time in months. "Find out everything about her," he told his assistant as the room slowly emptied. "Everything." By the next morning, Jihoon had a complete dossier, Maya Thompson, 31 years old, MBA from Columbia, had worked at Goldman Sachs before relocating to Seoul for the challenge and cultural experience, as she'd stated in interviews. She sent money home to support her younger brother through medical school. She volunteered teaching financial literacy in immigrant communities. She'd turned down 3 marriage proposals in the past 2 years, all from wealthy Korean businessmen. She was brilliant, independent, and apparently immune to the usual methods of intimidation or influence. Maya arrived at exactly 9:30, carrying a leather portfolio and an expression of professional courtesy that revealed nothing. Jihoon's office occupied the entire top floor of the building he'd purchased the previous year, all glass and steel with panoramic views of Seoul's skyline. "Impressive," Maya said, glancing around before settling into the chair across from his desk without being invited. "The view alone probably cost more than my apartment." "The view is adequate," Jihoon replied, studying her. "I'm more interested in yours, your perspective on the market expansion." For the next 2 hours, they debated strategy. Maya challenged every assumption Jihoon presented, backed her arguments with data, and refused to back down even when his frustration showed. It was exhilarating in a way board meetings never were. "You're not afraid of me," Jihoon finally said, interrupting her mid-sentence about currency fluctuation risks. Maya paused, setting down her tablet. "Should I be? Most people are." "I'm not most people, Mr. Choi. I'm an analyst. My job is to look at facts, not reputations." She leaned back, her gaze direct. "Though I'd be lying if I said I didn't know exactly who you are, what your family does. The rumors about how you consolidated power after your father died. And? And I'm still here, aren't I? Which means either I'm very brave or very stupid." Maya smiled slightly. "I prefer to think it's the former." "I prefer that as well," Jihoon said softly. "Have dinner with me." "No." The blunt refusal surprised him. "No? I don't mix business with pleasure, Mr. Choi. It's a personal policy." "Then you're fired. Now it's not business." Maya laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "You can't fire me just to ask me out. That's definitely illegal and probably insane. I bought this bank. I can do whatever I want." Spoken like a true tyrant. But her eyes sparkled with amusement rather than fear. "Fine. One dinner. But if you're boring or arrogant or treat the waitstaff poorly, I'm leaving." "Fair terms," Jihoon agreed, feeling something unfamiliar in his chest. Hope, perhaps. Or the beginning of obsession. That dinner turned into 3. Then 5. Then seeing each other became so routine that Jihoon stopped pretending he was consulting her professionally. Maya challenged him at every turn, called him out when he was being unnecessarily dramatic about business rivals, and somehow made him laugh more in 3 months than he had in 3 years. "You're different with her," his second-in-command, Dongwook, I observed one evening after Maya had left Jihoon's office following another strategy session that had involved minimal strategy and maximum flirtation. "Lighter." "She doesn't see me the way others do," Jihoon admitted. "She sees the man I could be, not just the monster I've had to become." "That's dangerous, Hyung. If enemies discover she matters to you, then they'll learn why I'm feared," Jihoon interrupted, his voice going cold. "Anyone who touches her won't live long enough to regret it." The turning point came 4 months into whatever they were doing. Maya had stayed late at the office, and Jihoon had insisted on driving her home. But as his car pulled up to her building, they found police cars everywhere, lights flashing in the darkness. "What happened?" Maya breathed, already opening the car door. Jihoon grabbed her arm. "Wait. Let me check first." But Maya was already out, running toward the building where her neighbor, Mrs. Kim, stood crying. The elderly woman had been robbed, beaten by thugs demanding protection money from immigrant business owners in the neighborhood. "They said if we don't pay, they'll come back," Mrs. Kim sobbed in Korean, which Maya had been learning. Burn down the restaurant. Hurt my grandson. Jihoon's expression went glacial as he listened to the details. This was a local gang. Small-time criminals who preyed on vulnerable communities. The kind of parasites he'd spent years eliminating from his territories. This stops tonight, he said quietly to Dongwook, who'd appeared at his shoulder. Find them. Every single one. I want them handled by morning. Jihoon, Maya said, pulling him aside. Her hand on his arm was gentle but firm. What does handled mean? He looked at her, this brilliant woman with fire in her eyes and compassion in her heart, and decided she deserved the truth. It means I'll make sure they never hurt anyone in this neighborhood again. By hurting them? By making them understand there are consequences for predatory behavior. Maya studied his face for a long moment. I know what you are, what your family does. I've known from the beginning. She took a deep breath. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise that whatever you do, you'll remember the man I see when I look at you. Not the reputation, not the fear. The man who brings me coffee when I work late. Who donated anonymously to the financial literacy program after I mentioned funding was tight. Who reads economic journals for fun and actually listens when I talk. Her voice softened. Promise me you won't lose that man to vengeance. Jihoon cupped her face gently. I promise to try. But Maya, understand something. The world I operate in doesn't allow for mercy. It sees mercy as weakness. Then change the rules, she said simply. You're powerful enough to do it. That night, Jihoon did something he'd never done before. Instead of having the gang members disappear, he had them brought to a warehouse where he explained in great detail what would happen if they ever returned to that neighborhood or any other immigrant community in Seoul. He bought the building Mrs. Kim's restaurant operated in and ensured every tenant had lease protections. He established a fund for local business security. And he did it all because Maya Thompson had asked him to be better. You're going soft, Dongwook muttered, but there was approval in his voice. I'm adapting, Jihoon corrected. There's a difference. 6 months into their relationship, which had progressed from dinners to weekends away to Maya spending most nights at his penthouse, Jihoon knew he wanted forever. But proposing to Maya required strategy. He planned it for a Saturday afternoon at the community center where she volunteered. He donated a new computer lab, and the opening ceremony seemed like the perfect moment. But as he waited for her to arrive, an elderly man approached him. You're Choi Jihoon, the man said in Korean. I know what your family is. Jihoon's security team tensed, but he raised a hand to stop them. Yes. My granddaughter teaches here. She says the American banker is kind, genuine. The old man studied him. But if you hurt her, if you bring your darkness to touch her light, there will be consequences. Not from violence, from karma, you understand? I understand, Jihoon replied quietly. And I promise you, I'd burn my entire empire down before I'd let my world harm her. The old man nodded slowly, then walked away. When Maya arrived, laughing with the children from her financial literacy class, Jihoon felt that promise settle into his bones. He would protect her, no matter what it cost. The proposal happened later in his office where they'd first really talked. Jihoon had the room filled with photographs, every moment they'd shared printed and displayed. Maya walked through them, tears streaming down her face. You kept all of these? She whispered. Every moment with you is worth remembering, Jihoon said, dropping to one knee. The ring was custom-made, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds, elegant and bold at the same time, like her. Maya Thompson, you walked into my life and changed everything. You see me, not my reputation. You challenge me, make me better, make me want to be worthy of you. His voice caught. I know my world is dangerous. I know I come with shadows and complications, but I love you more than I've ever loved anything, and I'm asking you to take a chance on me. Marry me." Maya's hands covered her mouth, tears flowing freely now. "Jihoon, Before you answer," he interrupted, "you should know that marrying me means protection, but also scrutiny. My enemies will see you as leverage. My business associates will judge us. Your life will never be simple again." "It was never simple," Maya said, dropping to her knees to face him at eye level. "I'm a Black woman working in Korean corporate finance. I navigate complexity every single day." She cupped his face. "But with you, for the first time in my life, I feel like I don't have to navigate alone. So yes, I'll marry you." The kiss was deep, claiming, full of promises they both intended to keep. They married 3 months later in a private ceremony that somehow made headlines anyway. "Mafia prince weds Wall Street princess," one tabloid screamed. "East meets West in controversial union," declared another. But Jihoon and Maya ignored it all, focused on building their life together. Maya continued working at the bank, now as vice president of international investments. Jihoon began quietly transitioning some of his family's operations into legitimate businesses, using Maya's financial expertise to guide investments in technology, real estate, sustainable energy. "You're changing him," Dongwook told Maya one evening when she visited Jihoon's office. "Making him into something different." "I'm not changing him," Maya corrected. "I'm just showing him there are options beyond the path his father set." For 18 beautiful months, they existed in a bubble of carefully maintained peace. Then the bubble burst spectacularly. The attack came without warning on a Friday morning that would change everything. Maya was in a client meeting at the bank when the first explosion shattered the lobby windows. Screams echoed through the building as 4 masked figures burst in, weapons raised, shouting in Korean. Maya's training kicked in immediately. "Everyone down," she called out, pulling her clients behind a desk. "Security, what's the status?" But the security guard at her floor was already down, unconscious or worse. Maya could hear gunfire from below, screams, chaos. And then the elevators dinged. The masked figures spilled onto her floor, and Maya recognized professional movement immediately. This wasn't a random robbery. This was targeted. "Maya Thompson," one called out in accented English. "Choi Jihoon's American whore. Come out, or everyone on this floor dies." Ice flooded Maya's veins. They weren't here for the bank's money. They were here for her. Slowly, she stood, hands raised. "I'm here. Let everyone else go." "Brave," the leader said, approaching. "Stupid, but brave. Your husband sends his regards." "Actually, that's not quite right. We sent him a message through you." The gunshot was deafening. Pain exploded in Maya's side, white-hot and all-consuming. She collapsed, blood pooling beneath her, warm and sticky against the cold marble floor. Through the haze of shock, she heard them leaving, mission accomplished. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was her assistant's voice, hysterical and terrified. "Someone call an ambulance. Get help. Oh God, Maya, stay with me." Across the city, in a meeting that suddenly meant nothing, Jihoon's phone buzzed with a message that made his blood turn to ice. A photo of Maya, unconscious in a pool of blood. Beneath it, one sentence in Korean. "The foreigner paid for your sins." The phone cracked in Jihoon's grip. His vision tunneled. Dongwook was talking. The board members were staring. But Jihoon heard nothing except the roaring in his ears. "Find them," he said, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "Find everyone involved. I want names, locations, family members, everything. And then I want them to understand what it means to touch Choi Jihoon's wife." His smile was death itself. "By the time I'm finished, They'll beg for hell as mercy. The drive to the hospital was the longest 12 minutes of Jihoon's life. His mind supplied every worst-case scenario. Maya dying before he could reach her. Maya afraid and alone. Maya calling for him while he was trapped in useless traffic. He'd failed her. After every promise, every vow to keep her safe, he'd failed. The emergency room was chaos when he arrived. Police everywhere, witnesses being interviewed, medical personnel rushing through corridors. Jihoon walked through it all like an avenging angel, his focus singular, until a doctor stepped into his path. "Mr. Choi, your wife is in surgery. The bullet entered her left side, possibly perforating her liver. We're doing everything we can." "Is she going to die?" The words felt like broken glass in Jihoon's throat. "The next few hours are critical. I can't make any promises." Jihoon's hand shot out, gripping the doctor's collar with barely restrained violence. "Let me be absolutely clear. If she dies, this hospital dies with her. Every person who touched her case, every decision made, every delay. I will destroy everything." His voice dropped to something cold and final. "But save her, and I'll fund this hospital for the next decade. Your choice." "I understand," the doctor stammered. We're giving her the best care possible." Jihoon released him and turned to find Maya's assistant Jennifer, standing nearby with tears streaming down her face. "Tell me exactly what happened." Jennifer's account was shaky but detailed. 4 men, professional, asking for Maya by name, the shot, their escape, and the message they'd spray-painted on the wall in Korean before leaving. "The foreigner doesn't belong in our world." Rage like nothing Jihoon had ever known consumed him. They hadn't just tried to kill Maya. They'd tried to erase her, to send a message that she didn't belong in his life, in his world. "Dongwook," Jihoon said quietly, his voice carrying across the waiting room. "Activate everyone. I want the city locked down. Nobody moves without us knowing." "And the people who did this?" He smiled, cold and merciless. "They're already dead. They just don't know it yet." The hours that followed were torture. Jihoon sat in the surgical waiting room, still wearing his Tom Ford suit now stained with Maya's blood from where he'd knelt beside her before the ambulance arrived. His men brought updates. The attackers had been identified as members of the Song family, a rival faction that had been losing territory to Jihoon's expansion. "They thought killing her would destabilize you," Dongwook explained quietly. "Make you reckless. Create an opening to move against your operations." "They were half right," Jihoon said, his gaze fixed on the surgical ward doors. "I am going to be reckless, but not in the way they expect." Finally, after 6 hours that felt like 6 years, the surgeon emerged, exhausted, but with a slight smile. "She made it through surgery. The bullet missed major organs by centimeters. She'll need significant recovery time, but she's going to survive." Jihoon's legs nearly buckled. "Can I see her?" "She's still unconscious from anesthesia, but yes. Room 312. The recovery room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Maya looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her beautiful brown skin pale beneath the fluorescent lights, bandages wrapping her torso, an IV in her arm. But she was alive, breathing, and that was everything. Jihoon collapsed into the chair beside her bed and did something he hadn't done since his father's funeral. He wept. Silent tears tracked down his face as he took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV, and pressed his forehead against her knuckles. "I'm sorry," he whispered in Korean, then English. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. All of it. And you were right to hesitate, right to be cautious. I pulled you into darkness and it nearly killed you." Maya's fingers twitched weakly. Jihoon's head snapped up to find her eyes fluttering open, hazy with medication but aware. "Jihoon," she mumbled, her voice rough from intubation. "I'm here," he said, his voice breaking. I'm right here, sweetheart. You're safe now. Hurts, she whispered. I know, but you're going to be okay. The doctor said you're going to be fine. Maya's eyes focused on him with surprising clarity. You're crying. Don't like seeing you cry. Despite everything, Jihoon laughed, the sound wet and broken. Then I'll stop. Just stay with me, okay? Don't leave me. Never leaving you, Maya whispered. Love you too much. I love you too, Jihoon said fiercely. More than anything. More than power, money, or empire. You're everything, Maya. She drifted back into medicated sleep, but Jihoon stayed beside her all night, holding her hand, watching her breathe, making silent vows about the reckoning to come. By morning, his men had assembled a complete picture. The Song family had orchestrated the attack, believing that killing Maya would make Jihoon unstable, create opportunities to seize his territories and business interests. They'd made a fatal miscalculation. I want them gone, Jihoon said during the emergency meeting in the hospital's commandeered conference room. His voice was calm, methodical, absolutely merciless. Not just the leadership, everyone who knew about this operation, their businesses, their assets, their protection networks. By the time we're finished, the Song family will be a cautionary tale. Hyung, Dongwook said carefully. That's a war. Bodies everywhere. The police won't be able to look away. Good, Jihoon replied coldly. Let them watch. Let everyone see what happens when they touch what belongs to me. But we do this intelligently. No civilian casualties. Every move calculated. We're not thugs. We're professionals. Over the next week, Seoul's underworld erupted in carefully orchestrated chaos. Song family operations were dismantled with surgical precision. Their smuggling routes were exposed to authorities through anonymous tips. Their legitimate business fronts suddenly faced devastating inspections and financial audits. Their protection rackets collapsed as neighborhoods switched allegiance to Jihoon's more reliable security. And the men directly responsible for Maya's shooting simply disappeared, in their fates known only to Jihoon and the team who'd extracted revenge. Through it all, Jihoon stayed close to Maya. He'd moved her to a private medical facility with security that could withstand a military assault, hired the best doctors, ensured she wanted for nothing. But there was a distance in him now, a coldness that frightened her. Talk to me, Maya said one afternoon a week after the shooting. Her side still ached, but pain medication kept it manageable. You've barely said 10 words to me in 3 days that weren't about my medical care. Jihoon's jaw tightened. What do you want me to say? The truth. What's happening out there? What are you doing because of what happened to me? His silence was answer enough. Maya pushed herself to sit up despite the pull in her side, her eyes flashing. Don't you dare shut me out now. I married you, knowing exactly who you are. I almost died because of who you are. The least you owe me is honesty. The words hung between them like a blade. Finally, Jihoon set aside his tablet and met her gaze directly. I'm systematically destroying the organization that tried to kill you. When I'm finished, there won't be a Song family left to threaten you again. How many people will die? Does it matter? Yes, Maya said firmly. It matters to me. I work in finance, Jihoon. I build things, create value. I can't be the reason for destruction, even if those people are your enemies. Jihoon stood abruptly, pacing to the window where Seoul glittered in afternoon light. You want me to show mercy to the men who shot you? Who would have killed you if their aim had been slightly better? Who spray-painted xenophobic messages about you not belonging? I want you to be the man I fell in love with, Maya said quietly. The man who figured out how to protect a neighborhood without resorting to violence, who started transitioning legitimate businesses, who told me once that he wanted to build something that lasted longer than fear. Her voice caught. That man wouldn't lose himself to vengeance. That man failed to protect his wife. The words were raw, torn from somewhere deep. Maya saw it then. The guilt consuming him. The fear he'd been hiding behind cold efficiency. She pushed herself out of bed despite her body's protests and walked to him carefully, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. You didn't fail me. I'm alive. I'm healing. And I'm right here, choosing to stay with you. She pressed her cheek against his back. But I need you here too, Jihoon. Not the crime lord. Not the vengeful husband. You. The man who reads economic journals in bed and makes terrible jokes about currency fluctuation. Jihoon turned in her embrace, his hands coming up to frame her face with devastating gentleness. I don't know how to be both. How to be soft with you and ruthless with them. Then we figure it out together, Maya said. Like we always do. But you have to let me in completely. No more walls, no more protecting me from the hard truths. The kiss was different this time. Not desperate or passionate, but tender. A promise and a plea wrapped together. I called off the kill orders, Jihoon admitted after a long moment. 3 days ago. The Song family leadership is gone. But the lower-level members, I let them scatter. Let them rebuild elsewhere. Because you're right. You build things. And I can't keep destroying if I want to be worthy of you. Maya's breath caught. That must have been incredibly difficult. Everything worth having is, Jihoon said, echoing words she'd once told him. You taught me that. 2 weeks later, Maya was cleared to leave the medical facility. Jihoon had upgraded their penthouse security, installed systems that could probably withstand an invasion, and hired a live-in physical therapist. But none of that mattered as much as the small changes she noticed. He came home earlier, smiled more, talked about expanding legitimate business operations. I'm proud of you, Maya said one evening as they watched the sunset over Seoul's skyline. His arms were wrapped around her from behind, careful of her still healing side. For what? For choosing a different path. I know it wasn't easy. Jihoon pressed a kiss to her temple. You make me want to be better. That's worth more than any empire. 3 months after the shooting, they received unexpected news. The Seoul prosecutor's office was offering Jihoon immunity in exchange for testimony against remaining Song family operations. It's a trap, Dongwook said immediately during the emergency meeting. But Maya, who'd insisted on attending despite Jihoon's protests, leaned forward. Or it's an opportunity. Jihoon, what if you didn't just testify? What if you offered to help dismantle organized crime networks in exchange for official immunity? Become a consultant. Use your knowledge to help law enforcement without being seen as an informant. The room went silent. That's actually brilliant, Dongwook finally said. It positions you as reformed, not weak, and it gives you legitimate authority to protect your territories without the criminal liability. It would take years to implement, Jihoon said slowly. Complete restructuring of operations, significant financial investment in legitimate businesses, retraining entire networks of people. Good thing you have the resources, Maya said with a slight smile. And you have me. I understand corporate restructuring, financial legitimacy, building sustainable business models. Jihoon studied his wife. This brilliant woman who'd survived being shot and now sat in a room full of criminals discussing corporate transformation like it was a routine board meeting. You're extraordinary, he said. I learned from the best, Maya replied. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took months of negotiation, strategic business moves, and careful maneuvering through legal and criminal landscapes. But slowly, Jihoon repositioned himself from crime lord to reformed businessman, cooperating selectively with authorities while building legitimate enterprises. He invested heavily in technology startups, real estate development, and sustainable business ventures. And with Maya's guidance, he established the Choi Foundation, focusing on financial literacy, immigrant business support, and community development. 6 months after the shooting, they stood together at the opening of a new community center in the neighborhood where Mrs. Kim's restaurant operated. The same neighborhood where thugs had once demanded protection money. "This is what power should look like," Maya said, watching children play in the new computer lab. Building up instead of tearing down. Jihoon pulled her close, careful of her shoulder even though it had healed completely. "I'm still not entirely legitimate. Some operations can't be unwound that easily." "I know," Maya said, "and I'm not naive enough to think you've become completely clean, but you're trying. You're building something real alongside the shadows. That's enough for me." "Do you ever regret it?" Jihoon asked quietly. "Marrying me? Almost dying because of who I am?" Maya turned in his arms, her hands resting against his chest. "Every single day." Jihoon stiffened and she laughed softly. "I regret it because loving you is terrifying. Because every day I wake up knowing your world has dangers I can't always predict. Because I can never fully relax, or never stop being vigilant." "Maya?" "But," she continued, pressing a finger to his lips, "I wouldn't change it. Not one single moment. Because you've shown me what it means to be loved completely, to be chosen every single day, to be someone's entire world." Her eyes shimmered. "You made me braver, Jihoon. You made me believe in impossible transformations." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and full of every emotion he still struggled to voice. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Jihoon rested his forehead against hers. "I have something for you," he said quietly. From his jacket, he pulled out a document. Maya unfolded it carefully, her eyes widening as she read. This is a financial literacy center. In my name. In New York." "Your brother graduates from medical school in 6 months," Jihoon said. "I thought you might want to spend more time back home. So I built you a center there too. Same mission, different city." He smiled. "You can run programs in both places, make an impact internationally." "Jihoon, this is incredible. This must have cost." "It's not about cost," he interrupted. "It's about building the kind of legacy that matters, the kind you taught me to value." Maya threw her arms around him, careful of her healing injury, tears streaming down her face. "I love you. God, I love you so much." "I love you too," Jihoon whispered against her hair. "My wife, my conscience, my salvation." They stood there as the sun set over Seoul, two people from different worlds who'd somehow found each other in the chaos. The danger hadn't entirely disappeared, probably never would, but they'd learned to navigate it together, mind to build something meaningful in the spaces between light and shadow. 2 years later, those dreams had evolved beyond anything they'd imagined. Maya ran financial literacy programs in both Seoul and New York, traveling between cities, making real impact in immigrant and underserved communities. Jihoon had successfully transitioned majority of his operations into legitimate businesses, maintaining just enough connection to Seoul's underworld to protect what mattered without drowning in violence. They'd faced challenges. Rival factions testing Jihoon's reduced criminal influence, political investigations that came dangerously close to exposing old operations, moments when Maya wondered if they'd ever truly escape the shadow of his past. But they'd faced it together. On their 3rd wedding anniversary, Jihoon surprised Maya with a trip to New York, her first extended visit home since moving to Seoul. They toured the financial literacy center bearing her name, met with her brother who was now completing his medical residency, walked through the Brooklyn neighborhoods where she'd grown up. "I want to do more here," Maya said one afternoon. "Maybe split my time 50-50 between cities. Build a real international program. Then we'll make it happen, Jihoon said simply. Whatever you dream, we'll build it. That night, in their Manhattan hotel room, Maya turned to him with sparkling eyes and a secret smile. I have something to tell you. Jihoon's expression shifted to concern. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Maya took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. Everything's absolutely right. We're pregnant, Jihoon. You're going to be a father. The world stopped. Jihoon stared at her, processing, then suddenly pulled her into his arms, careful and reverent. You're serious? We're having a baby? Due in 7 months, Maya confirmed, tears of joy streaming down her face. Surprise! Jihoon kissed her everywhere, her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, her stomach, murmuring words in Korean and English about miracles and blessings and futures he'd never dared imagine. I don't know how to be a father, he confessed later in the darkness. My father was complicated. What if I'm too damaged? What if I can't protect our child the way I failed to protect you? Maya turned to face him, her hand on his cheek. You're going to be an amazing father. You know how I know? Because you're already worried about being good enough. And because you've spent 3 years transforming yourself. Because you love fiercely and choose growth even when it's painful. She smiled. And you'll teach our child that strength means building, not destroying. That power means protecting, not dominating. Our child, Jihoon repeated, the words sounding like a prayer. God, Maya. Our child. Our child, she confirmed. Who's going to have your drive and my stubbornness and absolutely no idea what to do with either of us? They laughed together, holding each other, planning a future that once seemed impossible for a crime lord and the banker who'd seen through his armor to the man underneath. 7 months later, on a spring morning that smelled like rain and new beginnings, their daughter was born. She came into the world with powerful lungs, already demanding attention, one with a head full of dark curly hair and eyes that would eventually settle into a striking hazel, a perfect blend of both parents. Jihoon held her with shaking hands, this tiny perfect thing that was half him and half the woman who'd saved him, and cried without shame. She's beautiful, just like her mother. She's ours, Maya said from the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, completely ours. They named her Naomi Grace, Naomi meaning pleasant in Hebrew, and grace for the gift they'd been given despite everything that should have kept them apart. The hospital room filled with flowers, with security who'd become family, with Dongwook who refused to stop taking photos, with Maya's brother visiting from his residency program. And at the center of it all was this tiny family, built from bullets and boardrooms, from danger and devotion, and from the kind of love that refuses to accept impossibility as an answer. Later that night, after visitors had left and Naomi slept peacefully in her bassinet, Jihoon sat beside Maya's bed and took her hand. Do you remember what you said the first time we had dinner? He asked quietly. I said you better not be boring, Maya smiled. After that, you said dangerous men always underestimate women, and you enjoyed proving them wrong. I remember. Jihoon lifted her hand to his lips. You proved me wrong about everything. About love, about redemption, about the possibility of becoming someone better. You looked at a monster and saw potential. You loved me when I didn't deserve it, challenged me when I needed it, stood beside me when it almost cost you everything. He glanced at their sleeping daughter. I don't have enough words in any language to tell you what you mean to me, what you've both given me. Then show me, Maya whispered. Every day for the rest of our lives. Show me in every center we build, every life we touch, every moment you choose growth over violence. Show me in the father you become, the husband you are. I will, Jihoon promised. Every single day, I'll prove I'm worth the risk you took on me. You already have, Maya said softly. You already have. They sat together in the quiet hospital room, watching their daughter sleep, planning their future in whispers and dreams. Outside, Seoul glittered with possibility. Inside, 3 hearts beat in sync. A family born from an explosion and blood, from danger and devotion, from the kind of love that conquers trauma and transforms darkness into light. This was their happy ending. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and hard-won and absolutely theirs. And as Jihoon held both his girls close, feeling Maya's heartbeat against his chest and Naomi's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, he understood finally what it meant to be redeemed. Not by power or money or fear, but by love. By a brilliant, courageous woman who'd walked into a hostile takeover and changed everything. She'd looked at the devil and found her angel. And together, they'd built heaven in the spaces between shadow and light. If you loved this story of dangerous love and redemption, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment which moment hit you hardest. Should I create more dark romance stories like this? Let me know below. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the next addictive love story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.